half of the singing duo, the Everly Brothers, has died. The brothers had 19 top 40 hits with their distinctive sound.
Wake up, Big Susie, wake up.
Phil Everly was 74. I'm Alex Witt, NBC News Radio.
If you're a homeowner who's faithfully made your mortgage payments, you deserve thanks for doing the right thing. And I'd like to tell you about a powerful financial tool that rewards your commitment. Hi, I'm Jay Farner, president of Quicken Loans. And the tool that I'm talking about is the Home Affordable Refinance Program, or HARP. HARP is designed to help you lower your mortgage payments. It's for homeowners who are current on their mortgage payments, but due to the housing market may have little or no equity left in their home. And even if you were unable to get a HARP loan in the past, new guidelines mean that now you may be eligible. More than 2.5 million homeowners have already taken advantage of HARP and are saving an average of $250 a month. If you're one of the millions yet to take advantage, call us today at 800-QUICKEN. To learn more, call Quicken Loans today at 800-QUICKEN or go to QuickenLoans.com. That number again is 800-QUICKEN.
Important terms and conditions apply. Call us for cost information. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
From the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's Tan Talk.
It's now time for the fastest and hardest hitting hour in radio, Pull No Punches Radio. Pull No Punches Radio is powered by the Enlisted Nine Fight Company and brought to you exclusively by the Tan Talk Radio Network. Join us for the next hour as we deliver up-to-the-second news, rumors, and topic discussions from the world of mixed martial arts and sports while truly pulling no punches. Feel free to give us a call now at 727-441-3000 or toll free at 866-826-1340. Now, here are your hosts of Pull No Punches Radio, Ultimate Fighter Season 16 winner Colt Smith, Enlisted Nine Fight Company founder Dan O'Brien, and media mogul Jay Pagliaro.
I wish I knew then what I know right now. When my parents split, that's when it shook my ground. No source of strength now, my life was unclear. Cracks in the foundation, I was living in fear. Paycheck to paycheck, 3 jobs at a time. Mom tried, I watched her crying, not receiving a dime. My father was gone, he was doing his thing. As the years went by, my phone would ring. Played outside every day as long as I could to get away from the loneliness under the roof. I remember the day when you said your goodbyes. My hero was gone, that relationship died. How could you leave? We caused you no harm. You left mom and all of us to struggle alone. But the best thing that happened was you closing the door. I stepped up, became a man like an eagle, a sword.
Take a look, this is my rise. My rise to the top. I become much stronger now. And I'll never stop unless I
Hello. Good morning, Tampa Bay area. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Pull No Punches Radio here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. A happy New Year to each and every one of you. Thank you very kindly for joining us for this big show. Obviously, tonight we got a lot of stuff going on here in the college football world. We've got Florida State football playing for the national title coming up Monday night. Also saw the Buccaneers fire their head coach, name a new head coach. They're looking for a general manager as well. Plus, we're going to do all the talk of the world of MMA, including the big happenings in Las Vegas, Nevada last Saturday night. Chris Weidman retains the UFC middleweight title. We'll discuss all that and much, much more. I'd like to take this opportunity, though, to welcome my cast of characters today. First and foremost, Mr. Bill, the man behind the board today. Bill, how was your New Year, man? What did you do? Did you raise a lot of trouble? Did you get getting a lot of grief? Wound up in jail at all? Or
no, a friend of mine predicted that Lovie Smith deal, though, a couple weeks ago.
So he was Nostradamus. Not bad. Not bad. Well, always good in this end. We'll discuss a lot of that here on the program. But my honor and pleasure, though, at this point to introduce our guest co-host today. Now, for those of you that are fans of mixed martial arts, this man's synonymous with the sport of MMA. If there was a bonus check to be handed out, this gentleman probably got it in his career. Never left the fans dissatisfied. Never left the fans anything but talking their best, because this guy gave it his best. He is the one and only Chris Lights Out Lego. Chris, first and foremost, thank you for joining us today as co-host.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, bub.
No, it's my pleasure and my honor. And I want to make sure, is Dan on the other line, Bill? Is he with us too?
Yeah, hey, Jay, I'm on, buddy. How are you doing today?
Hey,
Chris, how are you, buddy?
Good.
Doing good, doing real good.
Good. I'll go ahead and introduce Dan O'Brien. Dan, what'd you do on New Year's Day, bud? Did you raise a lot of trouble?
No, I did not. I just sat around, took care of some soldiers out there at Fort Hood, and just sat around and watched some football.
Awesome. Well, hey, speaking of football, we'll discuss all that here on the program. But I want to kick things off, though, today. Chris, obviously you had an illustrious MMA career, walked away in 2011. Real quick, I know the listening audience is wanting to know, what have you been doing since then, since your illustrious career walked away? And mainly, do you have any plans on maybe coming back and fighting again in the octagon?
Man, I've been doing a lot of stuff. I got people I train. I got guys who I'm helping out. Got a guy getting ready to fight in Atlanta. Got Garrett Wiley's getting ready to fight in Atlanta here on his second UFC. And be helping out Matt Mitrione. I think he was getting ready to fight in China, so I'm getting ready to do both of those. As far as the fight plans, I really hadn't had anything at all I've been looking to do. I've always, I walked away from MMA, I think, the right way, and I was always very happy about my last fight, and it made it tough to ever want to come back. But just recently, I actually did try and get back, not in the octagon, but in the boxing ring a little bit. After Anderson Silva got hurt, I saw that Roy Jones they'd been talking about fighting, and he kind of said something about possibly fighting Nick Diaz. So I kind of put a couple of tweets out there that said that, hey, Roy, I had 15 pro boxing matches, so if you want to do a boxing match with somebody who's in the UFC, I think I'm the number one guy to do it. And I haven't heard anything back yet, though, but I would love to have a boxing match with Roy. Like I said, I was 13-1-1 in pro boxing. I really enjoyed it, but when I started fighting more in the UFC, I kind of signed a contract. I wasn't allowed to box anymore. So if Roy's listening, if he wants to do that fight, I'm definitely on. I would love to have another boxing match.
So let's here at Tampa Bay, let's get the word out to Roy Jones Jr. Chris Lights Out Lytle's coming for him. They want that fight to happen. Chris, Dan, I want to see that happen because, Roy's been talking a lot about wanting to get in there with a mixed martial artist. I think he may have picked the wrong one, though, when it comes to you.
Well, here's the thing. I fully believe that there's different styles of boxing. There's different styles of fighting for MMA. But I think my fight style for boxing is bad for Roy. I mean, the guys he does well with, not really me. I'm more of a pressure fighter, like a Glenn Johnson. I don't know if you remember when Roy fought Glenn Johnson, he ended up getting knocked out because Roy's fast and he's quick, he can move good, but when you keep pressure on him, I don't think he does real well. So, I think it's a good style fight for me, and I think, Roy, he's a little older than me, actually. I'm 39 now, and I think he's 44, so I think it's age-wise, we're pretty approximate. I think it'd be a good fight.
Hey, Chris, out there. You get in there with Roy Jones, you beat him. Is there any chance you maybe make a run in boxing again? Make a full-time return to professional boxing?
I mean, I can't really see that. I'm not really sure if I'd have any desire for that at this point, to be honest with you. I just know, one of my favorite memories from my fight career was, when I decided I was going to have my last fight in MMA and the ability to train for it just like I really wanted to, because I knew that was it. I was going to be able to spend more time with my family, which I've been doing for the past 2.5 years. But I never really got a good, last sense of my boxing match. I mean, I was still boxing when I signed with my UFC contract, and then my boxing career was just suddenly over. I didn't really I'd like to have a good, farewell fight, my retirement fight for boxing as well. I think it's fitting and fair, and I'd like to have that as well. But, I don't really like to do it against a light opponent. I think that'd be Roy. So.
But Dan, I think you were getting ready to chime in with a question, Chris, there, correct?
Oh, yeah, I was. Hey, Chris, this is Dan. I'll tell you, that's a great idea. I'd love to promote that on our Facebook site and try to get that buzz, spinning because, hey, 13-1-1, you were an outstanding boxer prior to going into the UFC. But I don't think Roy's looking for a guy like you myself. I think he's looking for a mixed martial artist, not a professional boxer. So I don't know if
I think you're right.
If he does, I'm excited about it.
Well, to be honest with you, I think Roy's, I think he's a fairly, intelligent individual with the fact that I think he knows he's not going to really compete with the top-tier boxers at this point. So he's going to do what he thinks is best and go towards another very popular form of combative sports, mixed martial art. And I think he feels that their boxing is so much inferior to his that he's going to be able to handle anybody at that level. So I'd be a little surprised if he wanted to take the fight against me, but man, I'm hoping he looks like all us MMA guys as being terrible boxers, and he'd do it.
Yeah, but he's definitely picking the wrong guy if he's just wanting to go in there and outbox somebody, because that's at his age And with your experience both in the mixed martial arts community and in the boxing ring, I don't think that's a good fight for him, but I'm all about promoting. I want to see it.
Now, we don't want to let him know that. We need to let him think it's a really good fight for him. Chris is slow too, Roy. Come on. You could beat him easy. One hand tied behind your back. He's never been knocked out, Roy. You could be the first, you know. Tell him stuff like that.
Hey, I love it. We sort of got about it.
Sort of got to buffalo him a little bit, huh? Sort of got to buffalo him a little bit.
Hey, you got to use your brain sometimes. This is chess, not checkers. You got to use your brain sometimes.
Hey, I'm all about it. Hey, Jay, let's get this thing rolling. I want to see it.
Oh, I do too. One of many. I think everybody on this program wants to see that. Even Mr. Bill, who's a big boxing fan. Bill, I know you like boxing. You want to see Roy get flattened by old Chris here, huh?
Call the show now, toll-free, 1-866-826-1340. That's 1-866-826-1340 or 727-441-3000. That's 727-441-3000. Once again, here's the guys. I like that.
See, I like that. See, there you go. Not only does he want to see you fight him, Chris, he actually gave the telephone number for anybody listening to this program to call. So if anybody wants to chime in on anything we're talking about today, feel free to give those numbers. Again, Pull No Punches Radio, Jay Pagliaro, Dan O'Brien, Chris Lights Out Lighter with you for the next 45 minutes plus. Now, speaking of things that were knocked out, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. Talk some NFL football. Obviously, it was a big week in the Tampa Bay area. The Buccaneers, Chris, Dan, decide to relieve their head coach after just 2 years, Greg Schiano. They also fired general manager Mark Dominic. Now, they're still looking for a GM. But at this point, they've quickly swooped in and they've gone back to the future for their next head coach, bringing in former defensive coordinator Lovie Smith to take over the reins. Chris, I'll kick things off with you. Well, what do you think of this move by Tampa Bay? Why do you think that things didn't work out with Schiano, and how do you think things will work out with Smith?
Well, to be honest with you, I wasn't real happy when I first heard about the firing. I mean, I thought, this was only his second year. He had a lot of problems he had to deal with. The quarterback controversy, he had, Josh Freeman had to get rid of him pretty much, sat him out. That was a huge problem. He had to start a rookie quarterback who, a third rounder, not a really highly touted quarterback to be thrown into that starting position. He had Doug Martin was hurt, Mike Williams. He was on his practice squad tied in. I think he had a lot of injuries to deal with. And the first half of the year, they were just pathetic. They were one of the teams who I always looked at as, people to bet against. I mean, they're not gonna cover the spread. It's very obvious. But then towards the end of the year, they were beating some people and they were competitive. They were heading the right direction. So I thought, this is the second year. You got to give them another year. But when they didn't do that and they did fire him, I think that they did the right thing. I think Lovie Smith is going to be, very good for him. He's a proven good record. He has his staff all together. He's been thinking about what he wants to do for the past year. He's already got, his offensive coordinator, the head coach from University of California, and then he got Marinelli for defensive coordinator. So I think he's really knows what he wants to do, and I think they're going to have a pretty good future coming up in the next 2 years.
I agree with that, and I mean, my big issue with them firing him is, let's be honest, 2 years in the modern day of NFL, Chris. I know people expect immediate results, and it's I guess you could call it a greed society. But being frank, Greg Schiano didn't do so badly last year. He went 7-9. I mean, he was not good this year. But as you said, he inherited a mess. Let's be honest. I mean, John Gruden didn't exactly do too many favors going out the door, and Raheem Morris, I mean, another one that really wasn't given a fair opportunity. My opinion, this is a long-term job. This is somebody that, they've got to bring somebody in there and stick with them, give them the opportunity. And perhaps they've done that with Lovie Smith, a proven head coach who's been to the Super Bowl, along with the star-studded cast that, as you mentioned, Tedford and their defensive coordinator. Who did you say they hired as DC again?
Marinelli.
So, I mean, that's a star-studded cast. I mean, that's a good cast for a young defense and a developing offense. Let me tell you, if anybody can put this offense in place, it's Jeff Tedford. I mean, he's got the head coaching experience, but he was a former coordinator, an offensive coordinator in the NFL who perfects the West Coast offense. So this is a wait-and-see approach. I'm interested in seeing how it pans out. Dan, what do you think? What do you think of the firing of Schiano? Were you in favor or opposed to it?
Okay, well, since I'm a Tampa Bay fan, since I own a house 10 minutes from the stadium, I'm going to go ahead and put my Bucko 5 in on this. So Tedford coming out of California, he brings the great resume in to develop quarterbacks, as we all know, like names of Trent Dilfer, David Carr. I mean, obviously he wasn't that great in the NFL, but as far as college quarterbacks, he had, Joey Harrington, he did Aaron Rodgers and Kyle Bowler. So as far as the offensive coordinator, I think they're spot on with that. I said, in my personal opinion is, with Lovie Smith, 3 division titles, 2 Super Bowl appearances, or 1 Super Bowl appearance as a coach, or 2 really when you think about it, because he was the defensive coordinator down there in Tampa as well. But the bottom line is Lovie Smith is the right guy right now. And you're right, they inherited a lot of people that, probably weren't best in that organization, and a lot of players. But the bottom line is whatever Gruden left behind and Raheem Morris left behind, this coach was, I think he was against the wall. I think he did a good job for what he had. But when you look at Lovie Smith, and now actually the defensive coordinator is Leslie Frazier out of Minnesota. They passed on Marinelli, so he remains at Dallas. But, hey, the great thing about it is that they get this GM in, which is they're looking at Chris Ballard from Kansas City, who has huge ties to Lovie Smith back from Wisconsin. When Lovie was a coach of Wisconsin, Ballard was a player there for him. So I think personally this is probably the best coaching staff that's been put together on a whim so fast. And I think if they go with the quarterback that they currently have, that could work out. But I also think that they're going to be looking to get a quarterback in the draft.
I'm not so sure. I mean, to me personally, I like what Mike Glennon did in his limited duties. 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, had a pretty, put up some pretty good games as a starter. It just really depends. I mean, Chris, what do you think? You think Glennon, you think they go with another quarterback this year? You think they draft one in this quarterback-heavy draft? Or do you think they give Glennon another chance and let him continue his development that he showed here in his rookie year?
I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him a chance and see how this season went. I think there'll be a good group of quarterbacks who go after the year after that if they need to. But, I mean, if you look at what he did, once again, he's a rookie. He wasn't, prepped to be the starter right away. He was thrown in after the 3rd game. And with all the injuries and all the problems he had, once again, he's not dealing with his starting running back. He's on a tight end who's on the practice squad, I think, at the beginning of the year. It was like the 3rd string, something like that. And he just had a lot of different problems to deal with, a lot of difficulties. And I thought he did pretty well, all things considered. I mean, what can he do after he has a whole year to prep for it? So I think they should give him the opportunity. I think they will give him the opportunity. But if it doesn't work out, they're not going to stick with him too long. I think they might draft a quarterback the year after that if there's a problem. But I would give him a chance. I think they will.
To be perfectly honest, if I'm Tampa Bay, and from what I'm hearing, Tampa Bay right now is looking for that defensive end pass rusher, whether it be Anthony Barr or rumblings are that they're going to move up in the draft and try to either convince Tampa or the Rams to make a trade so they can go after Jadeveon Clowney. My opinion, I think they get Clowney this year's draft. If they somehow get Clowney or Barr, give Glennon the opportunity. And if he stinks up the joint, let's take a look at next year's draft class. I mean, you got Winston heading pro very likely. You got Marcus Mariota very likely heading pro. So there's really, I mean, to me, this may be another rebuild year for him. Let's give Glennon the opportunity and see what he's got. If he doesn't have it, hey, then you move on. Nothing's harmed, nothing's foul, correct?
Well, hey, this is Dan here speaking, but, you guys are spot on. I mean, Glennon did a good job, and, they really don't have to go after a quarterback right now. I think defensively, obviously, the coaching staff that they brought in, that's exactly what Tampa's going to do. They're going to go back to the Tampa 2, which Lovie was a part of when he was a linebackers coach there back in 86 to 2000. So you're going to see a lot of that, and you might see a little bit of the Bears defense, making kind of a hybrid defense that'll be created there under Leslie Frazier with the supervision, obviously, of Lovie Smith. So I think defensively is going to be the priority. I think the most important thing is the development of Lamonte David at linebacker position. This kid's got a lot of talent. A lot of guys, even like Brian Urlacher, endorsed this guy and said, hey, if this guy listens to Lovie Smith, he'll be the next Derek Brooks. So I'm excited about that. And but I think that's the direction they go. I think they bring in the coach from Cal to develop the quarterback. So you guys are probably spot on in this situation.
I mean, they got a lot. I mean, let's be honest. You don't go 4-12 without problems, and there's a lot to be fixed. I'm not sure Mike Glenn is one of them. What are your thoughts, folks? What are your thoughts here on the Tampa Bay Buccaneer hiring a Lovie Smith, firing a Greg Schiano, and what do you think they should do in the draft? 727-441-3000 or 826-1340. You're listening to Pull No Punches Radio. Chris Lights Out Lytle, Dan O'Brien, Jay Pagliaro with you. Now, shifting gears here a little bit, moving back to the realm of MMA. Obviously, last week, the big fight, the fight that everybody was anticipating in the middleweight division, the much ballyhooed rematch between Chris Weidman, Anderson the Spider Silva. Obviously, the end result of that wasn't what any of us expected, wasn't what any of us wanted to see happen. Chris Weidman, obviously nothing taking away from his victory. Chris Weidman retains the middleweight title. But, Chris, Dan, I think the biggest thing here that this fight will always be remembered is how the fight ended. And as a fighter yourself, Chris, you've been in there many, many times. No one ever wants to win a fight in that avenue. I mean, Chris certainly is not going to turn down the win and say, here's the belt back. But you could even see in his face he wasn't happy with the way that fight ended in that manner.
No, and here's the thing. It would be a different story if I felt like, Chris was going to lose the fight, or if he was getting beat up and that kind of happened, or even if it was the start of the fight and you didn't know. But, that fight was going exactly the way I predicted. I did not think he would knock Anderson out again. I think he would do what he does best and get Anderson on the ground and kind of pound on and beat him up, look for the submission later on. But, the first round showed that's what, in my opinion, the fight was that's how it was going to play out. And then the unfortunate injury happened. It was just, a crazy thing. I've seen it happen one other time in my career, in about 15 years long. So it's not a very common thing to happen. So it was just a terrible thing to happen to Anderson Silva on what I consider to be his final fight of his career. So.
Absolutely. Now, asking you this question, Chris, how as a fighter, I mean, you've been in there with some of the best in the world. You've seen just about everything in the sport. How do you respond as a fighter when you win a fight like that? Obviously, there's some adulation, I suppose, because all that hard work you've put in goes to a victory. But I mean, how do you respond like that? I mean, how do you respond when seeing an injury happen to your opponent?
Well, and I noticed a lot of people were kind of upset with the way Chris was acting immediately after the victory. He was excited, and I don't think people can really possibly understand the amount of pressure that was put on him to win this fight and what was at stake and what was on the line for him. And just the amount of relief that happened in his eyes as soon as he wins the fight. He didn't know how serious the injury was, so, in his mind, as soon as he knows he gets the victory, he's ecstatic. And there's a huge release of pressure that he experienced. So I understand that, but to, you feel like you've worked hard and you were going to win the fight regardless. You don't want it to be tainted by going out with an injury default or a victory in that sense. So it's very frustrating. You feel bad for a guy like Anderson, who's, in my opinion, been the greatest UFC champ of all time. And it's just unfortunate that that's how it has to end. But that's the sport we're in, and injuries are going to be a part of it, now, tomorrow, and forever. So it's something you're going to have to get used to. But, I'm sure he was really disappointed he didn't get to showcase his skills the way he wanted to.
What's ultimately sad to me is, number one, if this is indeed the end of Anderson Silva's career, which at 38 years old, coming back from an injury like that, it very well may be. What's sad, that's the sad part, is I think he deserved really to go out fighting, and not that he didn't fight in this fight against Weidman, because I think Anderson was as focused as we've seen him in years. But you don't want to see a career of any age end like that, especially somebody like Anderson Silva, somebody who's done so much for this sport. But to me, the most frustrating and saddening part of this is people, number one, have used, once again, this to berate Chris Weidman, saying, okay, he can't beat Silva, this is a fluke. They've done nothing but call his first fight a fluke, which you don't knock Anderson Silva out by fluke, I'm sorry. And this, maybe the check kick was a fluke. Maybe this doesn't end 99% of the time like this, but who's to say that Weidman doesn't continue to out-wrestle him and pick up a unanimous decision victory, or, heavens forbid, a submission? And number two, people that are calling this a dirty move, Dan, Chris, they're saying this was illegal, it was dirty, they need to understand this sport a little bit more. There was nothing dirty about this move. It was anybody that's followed Muay Thai at all or participated in the sport, and Dan, I'll let you kick off with this. Anybody that followed this knows there was nothing dirty about what Chris Weidman did.
Absolutely not. I mean, that is one of the major techniques that nobody could ever pull off. When a guy has great leg kicks like that, obviously you're trying to check his kicks. And if he was able to pull off the knee check, then, hey, that's just something that most fighters, and Chris will even tell you this, you kick somebody on the knee, and that's probably the last time you're going to throw a kick for a couple rounds until that the numbing sensation goes off of that. And, you know, the thing about it is Anderson Silva has made many of the title defenses doing some kicks that some people would say were dirty when he would slash down on people's knees. So his techniques are violent just as well as the Chris Weidman, you know, technique was. But I can't even fathom in my mind that somebody say that what Chris Weidman did was a dirty move. It just blows my mind. You know, I mean, he fought that fight the way exactly he followed his game plan, what Sarah and all them put into place. And I just think that is, to be honest with you, it's deplorable that somebody would even think that Chris Weidman, probably one of the most humble champions so far, that would even consider fighting a dirty fight.
Absolutely. And they've done, I think it's people really, to be honest with you, Chris, Dan, are people reaching for excuses to discredit Chris Weidman. I just think I'm baffled by the fact that somebody that's defeated Anderson Silva twice can't get any more respect than that. I mean, you know, that people are saying it's a fluke and saying he's dirty, and now you're seeing crap online that he supposedly wiped his nose on the American flag. People, get over it. He's a champion at 185 pounds. I don't think he's losing that belt anytime soon. And frankly, you know what? He earned where he's at. He's done nothing but really, Chris. You've seen his career build up to this point. I mean, he's dominated. He's gotten there, and he's really not only beaten opponents, but he's been untouched, unscathed up along the way.
No, I mean, that whole thing that you're talking about is just completely shows the stupidity of many people and how, you know, the fact, like how far they will reach out in order to defend the person who they really like. I understand. I like Anderson too. I think he's been a great champion. It's been fun to watch. He's dominated people, but that doesn't mean, you know, you make your head, you know, make up reasons why that this guy's beating him and how he's dirty. And there's nothing dirty about what he did. It's a standard technique. It's a good technique. It's difficult to pull off. But, yeah, if a guy's kicking you really hard in the leg, you're going to do whatever to stop that. And a legal, you know, leg check is great. I mean, they don't understand. I remember when I first started fighting, I mean, there was like 3 illegal moves. There was, you know, groin kicks, fish hooks, and eye gouges. I don't think some places you can still, you can headbutt, you can knee to the groin, and whatever. You could do all kinds of stuff back then. So I look at that a little different. There's nothing wrong with anything that's legal now. I mean, it's a sport just like any other sport. These are totally legal techniques. To say that he's doing anything dirty just shows their ignorance to the sport. But not only that, it just shows to the extent to me of what somebody will say whatever when they fully believe in one fighter and he loses. They have to find reasons why. So
I agree. You know, people will reach deep, and people are continuing to reach. I mean, they're already saying that he's going to, you know, it's a running poll online, Chris, Dan. It's who's going to beat Weidman first? Who's going to be the first to beat Weidman, whether it's Belfort or Jacare? I mean, people just for some reason don't give this kid a chance. And they don't realize. I mean, he's only 29. His best is yet to come. And you fought Matt Serra twice. You know what kind of fighter Matt Serra is. That's the kind of guy Chris Weidman trains with every day. I mean, he trains with.
I mean, you know, Matt's one of my favorite people in the entire sport, and I knew when this guy was coming up and I saw his training with Matt Serra and them. I mean, I like the guy already because that says a lot about him to me, and it says a lot about his character. And I know some people who work with Matt and then they don't anymore, and you know, I understand a little bit why, and you know, I kind of, you know, I don't want to say I lose respect for him because, you know, everybody works with people different, but if you're going to work with Matt and you're going to put it forward that kind of effort and be with those kind of people, you know, that says a lot about your character to me. I know he's a good person. People aren't going to like him right now because people love Anderson so much. They're not going to like him because he beat Anderson twice. I understand that, but you know, eventually they're going to have to get over that and look at the fact that this kid is a great fighter who's doing some great things, and like you're saying, he's not eking out decisions. He's beating people bad. So they'll come to respect that eventually. It's going to take some time.
Absolutely. And anybody wants to give your thoughts on this, 727-441-3000 or 866-826-1340. You're tuned in to Full No Punches Radio here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. Jay Pagliaro, Chris Lace, Outlight, old Dan O'Brien with you here on the program. Now, another fight, gentlemen, that took place on Saturday night that had a lot of people buzzing was the Ronda Rousey-Miesha Tate second fight of their series. Probably likely the last fight as Ronda once again wins decisively. Answered a lot of question marks, I think, in this fight of whether or not she could take a punch, whether or not she would still be as good in the second and third rounds, and really, you know, whether or not the pressure of being the top dog after what happened on The Ultimate Fighter would get to her. She answered a lot of questions in this fight in Las Vegas, but I think ultimately what really people are going to be talking about for a long time was her post-fight antics. I mean, the fact that, Miesha went in to shake her hand, Ronda brushed her off. At that point, Ronda went from public enemy number one to America's most disliked, it seemed like. The boos were deafening. You couldn't even hear her thoughts in the post-fight interview where she was actually very complimentary of Miesha. Fact of the matter is, though, I mean, Ronda continues to, in a lot of cases, alienate the MMA fans that, Chris, kicking off with you here, you've been known as a humble fighter, somebody that, very respectful of your opponents, very respectful towards them pre and post fight. But what were your thoughts on Ronda's antics post fight? I mean, what do you think of Ronda Rousey in a whole, and what do you think of her post fight theatrics, so to speak?
I don't like it. I mean, to me, you're doing the sport and yourself a disservice. I've always been one of the people who, trying to get people to respect us as a sport, not necessarily two gladiators, two people going in there who hate each other, trying to kill each other, whatever. I want people to know that this is like a game of football, a game of basketball, whatever. I can go in there and punch you as hard as I can. You can hit me, and afterwards we can get up, shake hands, and treat each other with respect. So it just seems to me she has done herself a disservice and the sport. The more she continues to treat people this way, who I've met Miesha Tate, I've done things with her. She's always been extremely nice to me, and for her to, just disrespect her several times on the show when I watched, not shaking her hand ever, flipping her off. Even after you beat somebody, I could say, hey, this is over now. I don't understand it. I mean, in my opinion, she probably starting to get a little bit more humble now with all the boos and realizing the fact that people don't like what she does. Yeah, that should be pretty humbling, and that should make you kind of rethink your whole thought process and understand really what is this sport about and why am I involved with it. And, it's a little deeper than just this girl wants to fight me, I don't like her. So I don't really like how she's handled it. I hope she kind of matures a little bit and grows out of this and can understand the sport for what it is. And I mean, all these people you're going against, they're working just as hard as you are usually. So you got to give them a little bit of respect for just getting into that cage and fighting you.
Absolutely. And Dana, what do you think, man? What do you think of what Miesha and Ronda, what do you think of the fight as a whole, and what do you think of Ronda's post-fight festivities? I mean, are you on the same page as Chris?
Well, I am. And what really disappoints me is she had some of the best judo that's probably ever been displayed in the UFC that evening. And she fought wonderfully. I mean, obviously, she was a class ahead of Miesha Tate that night. But the thing that upsets me about it is, and going back to what Chris was saying, Chris, hey, let's just be honest. You've been around since the UFC 40 cards, and guys like you have put that work in, not only professionally, but fighting. And you guys built this sport, and I think UFC was at that tipping point or getting ready to turn the corner, so to speak, from about UFC 40s, mid-40s, all the way about UFC 100. This sport evolved into what it is for all of us today. So now I see the changing of the guard, so to speak. And some people are trying to be humble, like your Chris Weidman, and be very respectful and not gloat say too much, and try to make it a martial arts form, and like it was when we were all training in the gyms and being respectful with our opponents, like you touched on. And then you get somebody like her that is an unbelievable talent, and then to end a fight like that, and then to be so unprofessional. I don't know that we are doing the right things with certain athletes now in the UFC when they're doing things like this, that I don't know that we're going forward in our sport. We might be actually taking a couple steps back, because I really think even Anderson and Chael talked more nonsense about Anderson, but after that second fight was over, even Anderson said, you can come to my house for a barbecue. It's a business, I understand that, but at the same time, when you do things like Ronda did the other night, and MMA for females is coming up so great, to make that kind of statement by not doing what she did, I think that does not help us in any direction whatsoever.
Chris, what do you think of that? I mean, I think Dan brought up some very good points there. Do you care to elaborate on anything he stated?
I mean, I just in complete agreement. I mean, we've worked hard to get the people's mindset changed. You don't understand. Back when I would tell people in the year, 2000, 2002, that what I did, I fought in a cage, they looked at me like I said I just, I eat babies for breakfast every morning. You know what I mean? They just look at you like, what are you talking about? So it's taken a lot of time and a lot of effort. And, I took pride in the fact that people would look at me and they'd see the way I act. Like, I wouldn't pitch you as a cage fighter. I kind of changed their perspective of the sport. I get different people to watch the sport that had done it in the past. And when we were at events, they'd say, man, you guys are so approachable. You guys are so nice to people. You're not like the football players or the basketball players or whatever, or the hockey players. They say, you guys are just down-to-earth people. I take a lot of pride in the fact that we've given that image to people. And, it stinks when we've worked so hard for this for, 15 years, and all of a sudden maybe a group of new people come in and take away all the work you've done. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think that UFC is going to allow that to happen. But, I mean, I think it's just a matter that you get a lot of these younger people in there, and they don't quite get it yet. But I think they will as time goes by. So hopefully we can get it all where it can be more mainstream accepted and everybody treats it accordingly.
That's my hope, too. And, I mean, on top of things, Rousey, let's be honest, gentlemen, it's not as though Rousey is some random, newcomer at 155 pounds or a stacked weight class. Ronda is the face of women's MMA. Realistically, is she the best women's fighter out there? That's debatable. I think Chris Cyborg's a better fighter than Ronda Rousey, but I think right now Ronda's the face of it. She's the reason women are in the UFC to begin with, which is something that even 3-4 years ago we didn't see as plausible. Ronda, whether she wants to be or not, is also a role model to young females out there. I mean, my daughter's 11 years old. I've been a mixed martial arts fan her entire life. I've been trying to get her to watch mixed martial arts with me since as long as she was able to comprehend what she was watching. She wouldn't do it. She had zero interest in it. Now my daughter is a big mixed martial arts fan because of the women, because she can relate more to the Ronda Rouseys and the Miesha Tates and, the Kat Zingano's than she can, the Chris Weidmans, the Anderson Silvas, the Chris Lytles. The fact is, though, I mean, I'm sitting there trying to teach her the good of this sport, the human side of this sport, that these are, at the end of the day, just athletes that are doing their job. And she turned to me after the Rousey Tate fight, after the failed handshake, and she said, Dad, is that how I'm supposed to act if I get into this athletically? And it's just hard to explain, you know what I mean, that this is one person that, indicative. It's not indicative of the sport as a whole. So to me, that's the biggest issue I had with Rousey's antics, both post-fight against Tate and on the show, is that's a poor influence on kids. And reality, let's be honest, we're aiming to demographically teach the kids about the nature of this sport, so ultimately they can take over and participate in it themselves.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, you have to be honest with the demographics for the sport is, young people. I mean, we're not affecting, 45-year-old, 50. That's not. Demographics are very young people. So once again, just what you're saying, she is having an effect on young people, and you get with this privilege of fighting, there's a certain responsibility you have to take too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys are tuned in to Pull No Punches Radio here on WTAN, NBC Sports Radio, and the Tan Talk Radio Network. Jay Pagliaro, Chris Lytle, Dan O'Brien with you here. Feel free to give us a call. We got about 15 minutes, a little bit more than that left here on the program. Give us a call now, 727-441-3000 or 866-826-1340. Now, again, moving back to the NFL side of things, Dan, I'm going to let you kick this off with this discussion. Obviously, we got the NFL playoffs coming up. Starting today, we got 4 games coming up here in the next 2 days. You got the Chargers and the Bengals, Chiefs and the Colts. Chris, I know you're going to be amped about that, being an Indianapolis native.
Oh, yeah.
And you got the Saints, Eagles, and the 49ers, Packers. We'll start out with the AFC side of things. I'm going to start with the Cincinnati-San Diego game. Now, my opinion, I think this is the opportunity for Cincinnati to pick up their first playoff win. I think that they're going to roll through this one. I mean, mind you, Cincinnati hasn't won a playoff game since 1990. But this is a San Diego team that needed to go to overtime against Kansas City's second and third stringers. To me, Dan, this is a recipe for a big Bengal win. What's your thoughts? How do you see this one playing out? What's your prediction on it?
Well, I got a lot of my buddies up at Cincinnati, and I've always been a Bengal fan, in the closet. I'm not going to come out and say it, but, hey, from the back in the days of Kenny Anderson, Chris Collinsworth, and all those guys. And, here's the deal. Cincinnati has put in the work, and I think, their coach definitely has done a good job there. I think this is their opportunity. But, hey, I tell you, that San Diego, you come off a win like that, you become dangerous because now the team starts to believe. So I think Cincinnati, the only thing that's going to be working in their favor, I think in some of the skill positions they are better, but that weather that's coming in today is going to be their friend, and I think Cincinnati wins by 10.
Chris, what do you think? What's your prediction on Cincinnati versus San Diego? How do you see it play out?
Well, I hope this isn't just due to the fact that, I watched them on TV with their training camp this year, but I've been a big believer in Cincinnati the whole year myself. And I think something you said right there at the very end is going to be very true today. I think weather is going to play a factor. San Diego's going to have difficulty passing the ball. It's going to turn into more of a run game. Ryan Matthews is hit or miss. I just look at Cincinnati being able to pull this one out at home. I think they're going to cruise to victory.
I agree with that 100%. I love what Mike McCoy's done in his first year as head coach here in San Diego. He's really breathed life back into that organization, which sort of fell stagnant under North Turner at the end. But to me, Cincinnati picks up first playoff win since 1990. How crazy is that? They haven't won a playoff game since I was 11 years old. I just dated myself here, but that's like they haven't won a playoff game since George Bush the first was president. That's insane. That's going to change.
Were they doing the Icky Shuffle back then? Is that what when that was, or was that before that?
No, they were doing the Icky Shuffle, and they actually, you guys can look this up on YouTube. They actually did the Icky Shuffle. That was a big phenomenon before YouTube, and then they also had the Houday rap. I don't know if you guys are both my generation. You remember that big Houday rap that they got on there, did the rap song, and was kind of comical.
Well, if you remember back then, guys, if you know your football history, I think 88, 89 Super Bowl, that's when the Icky Shuffle was there. They were playing the 49ers. Tim Krumrie broke his leg on the first series. That was a great Super Bowl. 49ers drove at the end to win that game. But that's about the last that people remember of Cincinnati. So, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing something new today.
Hey, that 89 Super Bowl, to this day, the best Super Bowl of all time. Speaking of teams that have being in the playoffs had some recent success anyway. Team that has had some success in the month of January. The Indianapolis Colts back in January again. The AFC South champions for the second consecutive year. They take on the Kansas City Chiefs, host Kansas City. Now, quick recap, Chris. The Colts actually beat the Chiefs 23-7 back on December 22nd. So, is this one, Chris, you're in Indianapolis. You have an insight on the Colts that others may not. Is there any way this game goes any different in your opinion?
I mean, this is the NFL. It's a playoffs. Of course, there's possibilities it could go different. I don't see it going any different. You got to look at Kansas City. They took the whole season by storm at the beginning, but I think a lot of that was due to the fact that people thought they were so bad from the year before. People weren't ready for what they were doing, and they've done some fantastic things. They really have, but you have to look at the fact that in the last few games they haven't been playing nearly as well. And even when they went 9-0, how many teams have they beat with a winning record? I think it's one. So they have not really beat tough teams. They lose to the good teams. We've already beat them bad. This is on our home turf this time. I think you're going to see more of the same. I don't know if you have as many turnovers on their part, but I think the Colts roll to a victory today. So.
And Dan O'Brien, obviously, again, I know a lot of people saying if there's a chance that Indianapolis didn't play so hot in their playoff game last year against Baltimore. Two factors, though. Number one, rookie quarterback, rookie head coach, okay, young team. There's a big difference between the Indianapolis Colts we're seeing in 2014's playoffs over the ones we saw in 2013. That playoff loss breeds experience. That breeds, dare I say, a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, so to speak. Andrew Luck, let's be honest, this guy's an ultra competitor as it is. Having lost his first playoff game last year, he wants to put that to bed as quickly as possible. Love what Andy Reid's done there. Love what Alex Smith has done at behind quarterback. But I don't know. What do you think? You think that the Colts take this, or you think the Chiefs can pull this out?
Hey, Chris, I know you're up there in Indy, man, and I think you ran for some kind of political office in District 28 or whatever you did. But I'm gonna let you know. I think Indy wins. Hey, I think Indy wins. But I'm gonna tell you, I think Kansas City is playing with a chip. I think their defense is going to show up, and I think Indy's going to have all they want. But I think at the end of the game, I think it ends up being a field goal.
To me, it's going to come down to, the big question mark in this one is, can Indianapolis stop Jamal Charles? I think that they win or lose based off of how much they can bottle up Charles. And Chris, how well did Charles do in the first game against them? I think they did a pretty nice job at least keeping them in check, correct?
Oh, we did fantastic the first game. Honestly, that's something that scares me. I'm not sure if we can do this game, but we did. Like I said, I think we had 4 turnovers against them last time. Kansas City had 4 turnovers, which is not like them at all. So it scares me, the fact that thinking that they're going to do that again. I don't see it happen that way. I wouldn't be surprised if you're correct. I think it will be a fairly tight game. But once again, our defense has played much better the last 3 games. Kansas City is 2-5 in their last 7 games. I just think that they're not playing at their best. People have realized what they've been doing, and I think we're going to be able to pull out a victory here. So.
Hey, Jay, I definitely agree with Chris. I think they win. I think there's a lot of emotion stemming around their coach and his condition last year and the year before. And I think Indianapolis comes in today, and I think that today is their day, and this could even be going deep into the playoff rounds. But I just don't think it's going to be a stepping stool game.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the Chiefs, Andy Reid's too experienced in the month of January for it to be a stepping stool. I think that it'll be a tough game. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a blowout like the first one was, but I think Indianapolis, this is theirs to take. And quick statistical fact here before we move on to the NFC side of things. Each of the last 2 years and 4 times since 2000, the turn of the century, a number 4 seed has won the Super Bowl. That bodes well, in my opinion, for Indianapolis and Green Bay. And I like Indianapolis' chances of making a run better than Green Bay. Is not to play the advocate here, not to play the Indianapolis card, but I think there's a good chance they make a run. Now, moving on to the NFC side of the playoffs, we got it seems like these 2 teams play frequently in the month of January. You got Green Bay taking on San Diego. 2 major elements here to keep in mind. Number 1, Aaron Rodgers is back. Is he at 100%? Probably not. Is he at 70%? We'll find out here. I mean, he certainly looked pretty close to 70 to 80% against the Bears in a must-win situation. Number 2, Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers have to go to Lambeau. Do we see an upset here, Dan?
Well, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. Chris, you being up in Indianapolis, being a fighter, let's just have a little medical conversation here. Aaron Rodgers may be cleared to play, but that does not mean he's healed. And I will tell you, when they're below 0 up there in Lambeau, that collarbone is going to be a problem. I don't care what anybody says, but the bottom line is every minute you're out on that field at that temperature, your reactions, your body, everything starts to shut down, and it couldn't be any worse of a condition for him to try to perform at his peak performance in those weather conditions coming off of an injury like that. As far as Kaepernick, my personal opinion is he played at the University of Reno. I was stationed out there in the military. That is probably the coldest place I've ever been in my life, up there in the Lake Tahoe area, and I think he will be able to perform. What people don't realize, though, is the football shrinks. The football loses air. It gets harder. It's just going to be rough conditions. I don't think all the 49ers are prepared for that kind of weather like Green Bay. I say Green Bay, it makes it tight, but for some reason, I just think the 49ers' aggression is going to outplay the, Green Bay Packers today.
Agreed. I mean, I don't know. To me, that Lambeau Avenue is so tough. I mean, it's so tough. I don't think Kaepernick will be daunted by it. I'm on the fence about this one. I'm gonna pick San Francisco, but it's gonna be it's my coin toss game of the week. But I'll go with San Francisco in this one. Chris, what do you think? Who do you think wins this game?
Man, I hate when we agree all the time because usually that means we're wrong. But I have to go with San Fran in this one as well. And I think, to me, this is going to boil down to the defense. I just don't see Green Bay being able to stop them. Being able to stop San Francisco as much as San Fran's going to be able to stop Green Bay. I think San Fran has a much better defense. The only thing that really keeps this game as close as it's going to be is the weather. I think, that being that cold is going to be a difference. But, come on, this is the NFL. People are going to be somewhat prepared for that. And that will give them a little bit of an advantage for Green Bay. But I think, putting the 2 teams next to each other, defense to defense, I don't think that Green Bay stops San Francisco nearly enough to win the game.
Agreed. Last thing on
that. I know we're in a hurry, but you talk about momentum. And, when you look at that Green Bay game last week against Chicago, I mean, I understand Julius Peppers ruined contain and Chris Conte blew his coverage. But when you make a pass like that, people start to believe again, like I was telling you before. So Green Bay comes into this game with momentum. Rodgers comes in and does what he does, makes probably one of the most, like, I don't know, look, Johnny Manziel-like, game the other night. So I think they come in with momentum. I think this is going to be a good one. That's all I got to say on that.
Oh, absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. And real quick synopsis on this, because we still got the Florida State-Auburn game to come up to discuss real quick as we're up against the clock. But real quick prediction, Saints-Eagles, here's my upset pick. I think the Eagles pick up the win. I don't see – Drew Brees has traditionally struggled in outdoor situations. You take a dome team, you put them in Philadelphia where it's 10 degrees below zero and snowing. Bad news for St. New Orleans. I'm going to go with the Eagles in the upset. Chris, who do you got in this one?
Once again, don't like doing it. I have to agree with you. I don't even consider this really an upset. Philadelphia at home. The Saints have won 3 games on the road this year. As an elite team, that's not going to cut it, and I think that weather is going to be too much of a factor. I hate putting everything on the weather, but this is not normal coldness. This is brutal coldness right now. You guys are from, looking down that nice heat. I don't have much sympathy for you, but it is cold here, so I can't imagine how cold it's going to be in Philadelphia. That's going to be a factor. That's a pretty close game. That's my coin toss of the week, but I would go with Philadelphia on that game as well.
Dano, what do you think? Real quick.
I'm with Philly also. Let's move it on. We're running out of time.
Let's move it on. All right, real quick. Bill, cue it up. Here's my lock of the week. Anybody wants to go to Vegas and bet on lock of the week? Bill's got the team that's got the lock of the week. Bill, fire her up.
Who they? Who they think gonna beat them Bengals? Who they think gonna beat them Bengals? Who they think gonna beat them Bengals?
The banks of the Ohio comes that orange and black machine. They're the Cincinnati Bengals, the finest ever seen. With stripes upon their helmets
There's
and
my lock
fire
for
in
the week.
their eyes.
Cincinnati over San Diego. Stone cold lead pipe lock. Cincinnati going to beat San Diego. That's the one thing I'm going to tell you to take to the bank. Now, real quick, we got to wrap it up. We'd be remiss if we don't talk about the big game in college football. Florida State, Auburn for all the marbles. The final ever BCS national champion will be determined. We move into a playoff system next year, but we couldn't ask for a better national title game to be played, in my opinion. 2 high-octane offenses, 2 fresh blood head coaches in Jimbo Fisher and Gus Malzahn. I've been looking forward to this game since Auburn beat Alabama, and I had the hunch they were going to bypass since Auburn beat Missouri, and I had the hunch that they were going to bypass Ohio State, which Ohio State wound up losing anyway. But big game here. I'm expecting, my only prediction on this one is you're going to see probably close to 100 points scored in this one. Dan, real quick, who are you pulling for? Who you got in this one?
Hey, you know me. I'm an FSU guy. I was recruited highly out of them out of high school, and later on in my years, that's my team. But, hey, the bottom line is, will they have the ability to show up? I don't know. Everybody else is taking one on the chin, except for Florida State, and I hope this isn't the one. But I'm going to go ahead and go with Florida State. But I think Auburn's coming, man. I really do.
Hey, Winston throws for 364 touchdowns. Florida State wins at 38-24. Chris, what do you got, bud? Who do you see winning this one?
I'm going with FSU as well, man. When I was watching that game, when they were playing number 3 Clemson at Clemson, and they dismantled them, I said, wow, they are at a different level than I thought. They are the real deal, and they haven't disappointed since then. So Florida State's going to take this one fairly easy. I agree with you on that one. Hey, that being said, things that were fairly easy, this Pull No Punches radio broadcast. Chris, great job, man. We certainly hope that you do this on a regular. We'd love to have you back as a regular co-host, but you did a fantastic job. Love to be back, guys. Hey, real quick, Chris, where can the people check you out in the meantime, and where can they check you out on social media for those that are interested in finding you? Go to Facebook at Chris Lytle. That's it, pretty much. So I'm on Twitter, too. Lytle for Indiana from when I ran for State Senate. So. Lytle for Indiana. Be sure to check them out. Also, be sure to check out at Enlisted9 on Twitter and Enlisted9 Fight Company also over on the Facebook page. We're, the most interactive, fan-friendly site out there, so be sure to stop by. We discuss all this stuff in a nutshell every week. So, hey, that wraps it up for tonight's show, today's show. We'd like to thank you all for joining us again for the fastest and hardest-hitting hour in radio, Pull No Punches Radio. Dan, any final comments?
Hey, I just want to say, Chris, Chris, you're my man. I always vote for you. Coach Smith loves you, man. We'll come on the show whenever you want. I'll send you a Facebook like. Let's get into some talks and build the show. I appreciate you, brother.
And with that being said, we will see you next week. For Mr. Bill and Pull No Punches Radio, Jay Pagliaro, we'll talk to you next Saturday night here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
WTAN, Clearwater, Tampa Bay. WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay. WZHR, Zephyr Hills, Tampa Bay. Listen.
It's time for the Saturday edition of Canada Calling, the news from home for vacationing Canadians throughout Florida. This is Prior Smith speaking from Toronto. Today marks the 60th anniversary of the launch of the Canada Calling radio network in Florida. It was started by veteran CBC broadcaster Dave